The views shared in this episode represent Kelli and Kendra, not our mamas, partners, church, job, or sponsors.
This is part one of a two-part conversation, so we look forward to you joining us for both episodes. During today's podcast, we will be discussing reproductive health issues. So if you are someone who has a complicated relationship with your uterus, cervix, vagina, etc., please feel free to skip to the show notes for resources. If you are someone who is dealing with infertility and conversations about reproductive health are stressful, you too can visit the resources. And we hope that this pod episode is both informative and empowering and supportive to our listeners.
It's so good to have Dr. Chiyah A. Lawrence back in the place to be.
It is. Hi, Chiyah.
Hi, friends. I miss you all.
We miss you too. How's adulting?
Oh, I'm tired.
Yeah.
I'm so tired, but I've paid off 2 accounts so far, so
yes,
it's worth it.
All right, grown-ups.
Yeah, we like it.
Some things.
Work 7 days a week.
You know you owe when paying debt and paying bills is like like what you celebrate more than anything.
Right?
Real talk. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Blessings.
Yes. Well, thank you for joining us on the pod. I know you had a long work day, but we thought we could not have this conversation without you being here because it's been a theme in our group chat.
Absolutely.
Yes, thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
I'm trying to think where we should begin. I think the question that is in my head, I'm trying not to be, I could be silly with this sometimes, because what I want to say is, when did you know that your uterus was broken? Because that's how I talk about it. But I think, Chiyah's face, the therapist face, my God.
No, that's the weight. So that silly face, because that was what I was thinking about on my ride. So if that's silly, then I guess we silly.
Ooh, say more.
Well, I was thinking, okay, so I don't know what the conversation, where we're going to start with the conversation or where we'll land. So what is this? Well, shoot, when did it start? When was the first time that I knew that my womb didn't work? Is the actual question that I asked myself. So.
Yeah. Did you come up with a...
Oh, well, yeah. I think I was about 25, 26. I had a girlfriend who had already had a myomectomy for fibroid removal, and her experience was really difficult. I was having my first pap smear because I was a good church girl, so I was a virgin for a long time. And then I had a really bad experience trying to have one in college. So I was having my first pap smear, and my Asian PCP very aggressively did my pap smear, so it was painful. And she discovered at the same time, that I had fibroids, and she was like, "Oh, but it's no big deal, so don't worry about it," which bothered me because my friend just walked through this difficult situation and I was concerned about some things, and that was my introduction to it. And about a year later, I went to work and I had period pain for the first, I didn't tend to have really difficult cycles.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a pain that I had never experienced before. I had to stay home from work for the first time. I didn't know what was going on. And by the end, I touched my pelvis and it was hot to the touch. And then by the end of the day, I realized, oh, it's the fibroids. And then I went to urgent care and all the things. And I ended up having surgery, I think 2 months later.
Wow.
For the first time. So I was 27. And when they did the ultrasound, and I talked to some stranger I never met, and she told me, "Oh, well, yours are really big, so you might have to have a hysterectomy." At 20. So it was 27 when that came up for the first time. And I said, "I'm 27 years old. I'm not having this conversation with you." And I hung up.
Yeah.
Why do I know so many Black women with similar stories, including me, including my mom and others.
Yeah.
Some of which I didn't find out until after I went through it because, not everyone likes to share their trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And, our mother's generation likes to keep things to themselves, but just wow.
Yeah. Same. For me, I had to be in my 30s because I got married at 29 and started on birth control. I'd been on birth control before, but I wasn't in a relationship and wasn't sexually active for a couple years. And so I got back on birth control, and then I said I was going to do it for 5 years. I don't know where I got the 5 years from. And then at the 5 year mark, I got off the birth control and then realized, oh, I've been off birth control a long time and I haven't gotten pregnant. And that's when I started being curious and talked to my nurse practitioner. And she was like, oh, well, let's just check it out just in case, right? She's like, I'm sure you're fine. Your body's just, adjusting or whatever the thing she told me at the time. And I remember going to what ended up being a fertility specialist. And he was like, it seems like you have a cyst. It's probably endometriosis. And I was like, and what is that? And basically, what we think was happening is that because I had been on birth control, it was masking my endometriosis. And I would have never known, except for the fact that I wasn't getting pregnant, that I had these huge, they call them chocolate cysts. And endometriosis is something that most people think about as a reproductive health issue, but endometriosis can grow anywhere. And so I ended up having my first surgery when I was about, I guess, 35 or 36. And then I had a second one in 2016. And now that I have endometriosis, anytime I say that I have endometriosis, I hear other people, oh, yeah, I have endometriosis too. And what I realized coming off the pill is that I too was having heavy cycles, bleeding through jeans, having to go home, a lot of clotting, and a really recurring theme in a lot of the friends. So many of the women that I know either have fibroids or have endometriosis, which I've found fascinating. And, I don't know if it's a conspiracist to me, but I just have a lot of questions about why so many Black women have reproductive health issues in this country.
Isn't it crazy how you didn't realize these severe symptoms were happening that you were experiencing regularly until you look back? I had a similar situation, like, oh, there's a stain on my work chair. Oh, I've had these accidents or flooding, whatever the case.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know until you know.
Yeah. I used to describe it as it felt like the River Jordan was gushing out of my body. That was, it was the only kind of intense biblical thing that I could think of. And I was just like, that's what it feels like. It's like the great flood. And all you can do is pray you make it to your car before you have a full on explosion somewhere.
I guess y'all want me to talk to?
You were probably the earliest person I knew who had reproductive health issues.
Yeah, since I was a teenager, because which you would never connect, we never connected things to reproductive issues when you're a teenager, because you're like, I'm a teenager, We're still grappling with the fact that we have a vagina and a uterus and the ovaries and things. But yeah, I had horrible cycles my entire youthful age, like high school, middle school. I started periods in middle school, and by the time I was in high school, my high school nurse told my mom to stop letting me come to school on my first day of my period, because I was just going to end up in a nurse's office, because I would get so sick, deathly sick, just excruciating pain. I would vomit nonstop, even if I hadn't eaten in days. So I would just be vomiting body fluid, because I was so sick and nothing worked. Folks, like my stepmother and others, gave me Chinese herbs and all these kinds of things they tried to do. And finally, at about 15, 16, I had to go on the pill, and the pill was the only thing that would work. I was on one of the earlier 1950s kind of pills, Ortho Novum 777. And I was on that baby for a long time, and it regulated my periods. And I was like, oh, this is what it means to be normal. And I would have a normal period for many, many years. But then I was like, oh, birth control is my lifeline. Because I didn't have, there was apprehension about me getting on it. But then, like, once I was on it, I was like, this is keeping me alive. Then after college, I moved to LA, and I was in the Kaiser Permanente world over there with you, Dr. Lawrence. And I got a new doctor at like 21, 22. And I went to her and, I told her I was on the pill. Of course, when you join a new doctor, in order to get the prescription filled, they want to see you. And I sat and talked to her. She asked me how long I've been on the pill. And asked me how long I've been on the pill. And I said, since I was a teenager. She's like, oh, you need to go off for a little bit. You need to give your body a rest. And she's like, I'm not going to recommend that you get that script again. And when I tell you I was heated at that lady, but I did. I went off of it. And for a while, I was okay. For a while, it was just okay. Like, it seemed to be somewhat normal. I eventually moved back to New York and went to an acupuncturist and a Chinese herbologist. And she talked to me about my reproductive health. And she said, I'm sensing that you have a hormonal imbalance. I think you've had it for many, many years. But I talked about being on the pill. She's like, I think them putting you on the pill so early worsened it, And she's like, you're probably going to have reproductive issues, sexual intimacy issues. Like, she basically said, you're going to have all these issues because you're hormonally imbalanced. I was like, okay, what do I do with that? And then years later, I went back I found another good doctor, went back on that pill, and like nothing was and everything was good. And I was like, all right, I'm back. I'm a human again. I can do this. Because what started to happen is my period started to get worse again. And then it would just be like, I would be somewhere. And like what I was able to do when I was on the pill, where I would just put on a pad and be normal, I was in places and end up being that it would like be all over my body. I remember being in the recording studio on Broadway in Manhattan, recording something for some rappers that we know. And I remember I didn't want to leave the session because I wanted to get the song done, and I was bleeding all over myself, and I was in the booth bleeding. And it just so happened I had like this pleather outfit on, and so it was just trapped in me. And I got home and I was like, okay, this is not normal. And then my period, the only thing that was good is that the pill continued to regulate it, that I got it at, every month, but it would be so heavy. And then finally one day I was like, this can't be normal, because even after I went back on the pill, at first it calmed down. And then years later in my 30s, it started getting heavy again. So I was like, first the pill was like regulating it. I'm sorry, I'm confusing things. I was off and I went back on. But then after a while, even the pill wasn't like stopping it. And so finally in my 30s, I was like, I think I have fibroids. Because I was like, I know what this looks like. My mom had them. My best friends had them. I was like, something's not right. So I was like, I don't know that I have fibroids, but I think I have fibroids. And I went to my doctor, and I had a French man gynecologist at the time, who at first I liked because he was quick, simple. He was in and out. He didn't do all the extra stuff. But when I went to him and told him I had fibroids, he was like, let me examine you. He's like, you don't have fibroids. I was like, well, you can't just always tell just by a thing. And so I like made him send me to a specialist. And even though he was kind of an ass, it was the best thing that ever happened to me, because he was just didn't have good bedside manner. One time I was like bleeding profusely, and I went back to him and his doctor, and they're like, well, the only thing we can do is examine you. I'm like, I'm not going to let you examine me. I'm bleeding hard. Like, I had never done that before. Like, if I had an appointment with a gynecologist, I would cancel if I was bleeding. And when I was acting like that, they were like, you're being ridiculous. Like, they were mean. But anyway, the specialist ended up being a fertility specialist in New York, one of the best in the city. He told me, yes, he had me do a water infused, saline ultrasound. No, they do the ultrasound, and then they infuse saline water in your uterus to expand it so they can see things with water. It's the most painful thing you'll ever experience. And yeah, I had them, and then I went through several years of like, oh, we want to do something for you, but you're of age to have children, so we don't want to do anything too invasive. So like, I went through years and years of them just doing this thing. But the reason why I really found out how bad it was is because the mean doctor, I had him change my pill. My doctor, my boss had told me about a pill she was taking where she only had to take it like a pill like once a month or something. One of those like weird new pills they had, or you didn't have to take a pill every day. And I tried it, and that's when everything exploded. And then I had a cycle for like 30 days, then 40 days, and it just wouldn't stop. And it got so bad where they had to put me on hormones to trick my body into thinking I was in menopause. So I was having hot flashes and all that stuff. And one time I was bleeding so bad in the shower that I almost fainted. And I went to the emergency room because I was like, I literally said, I'm going to die. It was that bad. It was like I birthed the baby. I was like, I'm going to die. So anyway, I've had a traumatic series of experiences with this. And until finally my quality of life got so bad where, to your point, Chiyah, I would be places and I would just bleed over myself, or I would take my phone into the bathroom with me because I didn't know if I could leave. And then I'd call my coworker like, okay, I need you to go downstairs to Walgreens or Duane Reade, buy me some underwear and buy me some leggings at the store across the street. Because otherwise I'm just going to be chilling in the bathroom. And I would sit in the bathroom for hours waiting because I couldn't leave it. I was having those kind of episodes and my quality of life just got so bad. I ended up moving home to Pittsburgh. That wasn't the only reason why I moved, but that did have a lot to do with it. And I got the help I needed. And then finally in 2015, just shy of my 40th birthday, I got a uterine fibroid embolization. And that turned the corner for me, but it didn't stop my constant reproductive issues. And I'm still dealing with trauma related to poor bedside manner, people not understanding my body. Now I'm bigger than I've ever been, which I am not big. But as soon as my BMI hit over 30, it was like, oh, you're having all these issues because you're fat. So now we just need you to lose weight and then we can, you'll be fine. So I could go on. And I know that was long. I'm sorry.
No, I might be fat because my hormones are out of whack and I need you to help me address these concerns that I'm having.
We'll be back after a quick break.
Looking to take your podcast to the next level? Centering Equity Productions has your back. With our expert team, we specialize in crafting high-quality audio content that captivates your audience and boosts your brand. From concept development to marketing strategies, we handle it all so you can focus on what you love, creating amazing stories. Whether you're a seasoned podcaster or just starting out, we'll help you shine in the crowded podcasting landscape. Let's bring your vision to life and make some noise together. Contact us at info@centeringequityllc.com or www.centeringequityllc.com.
And how many Black women do we know, right, in the same situation who's gotten the runaround or been dismissed? And yeah, it's traumatic on all the levels.
So traumatic. And and now I'm like, thank God there's this online, shout out to the ladies who decided enough is enough.
Yeah.
Now I'm in perimenopause, walking towards menopause and still dealing with issues, but I found an online organization called MIDI Health, and they're literally focused on perimenopausal and menopausal women. They have an online clinic. They accept insurance, but if you can't do insurance, you can just pay. And I think the initial visit is like $200 and something, which is
not bad.
Prohibitive.
Yeah.
Prohibitive for a lot of people, but for for some, it's a lifeline. And I have a nurse practitioner who's also does like holistic health and stuff, and she's helped me get hormones I needed. I don't have the hot flashes. Anytime the weight stuff, she recommends the herbal option first. And she says, you can have the herbal option or the prescription. You let me know what you want to do. It's just been a lifeline. Mm-hmm. And I hope more people get that kind of relief. But I know we're talking about reproductive issues, but they don't end.
They don't. And it's all a part of the same.
Yeah.
The same system. And if you've had hormonal issues your whole life, I think it just makes perimenopause that much worse because your hormones are already out of whack.
Right. From the beginning. And what would have my life have been differently at 11 or 12 or 13 when I was having these devastating horrible periods? They just figured that out. Like, wait a minute. Yeah. We should probably figure out, maybe we should test her, do some blood testing and figure something out. Mm-hmm. Is there a way we can balance this out so she can start her life off? And it's like my uterus has been traumatizing me my entire life.
Yeah. I have a question because I've heard, in my Google research, lots of different perspectives on this, right? And I think one of the common themes is around trauma that we as Black women hold in our wombs. And I'm curious in your journey, how that has landed with you and what you've thought about that.
So first of all, disclaimer, remember in the group chat this morning, I said, I think I'm overdue for a cry. I feel like it might happen at any moment now because I'm sad. I'm empathic about what I'm hearing. It's a lot going through me right now, but how I've experienced that initially. So I had my first open myomectomy surgery in 2008. And after that surgery, I went through this period of, because of a few different influences, I went through this period of time that I had to eat clean. I had to be and do all the right things so that the fibroids wouldn't grow back, which of course to a degree that there's some truth to that, but it was that extreme kind of like, you can eat your way out of this, when the truth was lifestyle in the United States of America is all of the risk factors for fibroids growing and birth control pills. But so for those first few years, I had to break free of that and just be okay with whatever. Like, I'm in graduate school, so I'm stressed. I'm broke, so my food, might not be the best quality. So I had to like be okay with that and not stress myself out. But there was one year that I'd gone to the doctor and my fibroids had grown so much that they sent me for an MRI or whatever, just to make sure like I didn't actually have cancer or something like that. And I just looked at the calendar. Oh my goodness, I forgot all about this. I looked at the calendar because I was like, well, because the doctor said, what has happened that they would mushroom like this in this period of time. And so I looked at the calendar and it did in fact line up with my mother had passed away, but I also had dealt with like the worst man that I've probably dated. And you can't tell me that it wasn't actually a connection to the emotional turmoil that I experienced and my uterus going a little crazier than it already was.
Yeah.
That's kind of what you're getting at, right? This kind of like we hold the emotions and they show up in
I believe it. And it's wild because I went through a similar period when I was not being treated for the fibroids, but when they were like trying to treat me for fertility, I'm like, wait a minute, I came here to tell you that like I'm dying, and you're like trying to figure out how to like. They sent me to someone to talk to me about freezing my eggs and stuff. I'm like, you don't understand. I don't want anybody to touch me because I feel disgusting. But anyway, what was I talking about? Oh, trauma.
That is trauma.
Yeah, that's trauma. I went through that for several years too. Like before I moved back home. I mean, it was a couple years before somebody recommended, say, you should try this thing. Right. Especially where mine were. Mine were impacted. They were tiny, but they were in the wall of my uterus. Oof. So it was a very difficult situation. But anyway, when I started becoming obsessed with like researching about fibroids, and I was in a writing group with some folks that I had gone to the New School to my graduate degree with, and started writing about it. And so I started researching about fibroids, and I was like, actually, a lot of women have fibroids, including a lot of white women, but Black women always have the most symptomatic fibroids. And that's when I started to think of like, it's not just the issue of fibroids, but they are literally like they're killing us mentally, spiritually, and there are far more symptomatic. And why is that? People have talked about relaxers, and there's a correlation between that, but like literally creating like sometimes non-cancerous, but very tumors that are like making our way of life and our everyday life hell. The thing that killed me the most is like, I knew my mother had fibroids because when I graduated from college, I moved home briefly. She had a hysterectomy, and then I had my knee surgery. And so I nursed her through her thing, and she nursed me through my thing. And then I moved to LA. And it wasn't until years later, like I didn't even really know why she was having hysterectomy. Like I knew she had fibroids, but I didn't really know, like in my 20s, I was like, okay, what is like, you have fibroids. So whatever, you're done having kids anyway, right? I didn't know until later that like my mother's like, oh, they were horrible. Like they were the size of grapefruits. She's like, sometimes I would just be at work in the bathroom crying, and then I would, get in trouble for not being at my desk. And like, she's like, they were horrible. But I'm like, how come you never talked to me about them? And she's like, I don't know. I mean, I just, like, I was like, she's like, you knew I had fibroids. Yeah, but I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know you were like dying and you had kids and then, like, and I didn't have any of that. And I'm like, this is not life.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just, there's so much trauma and there's so much like, and my mother likes to, not to keep picking on her, but she likes to keep things in. And I'm just thinking like, is that grapefruit? All those things, all those stories that she has not told, all those things that she's held on to, is that what that grapefruit was?
Huh.
And then, so when I went to a couple of people, found out about the UFE. I said, let me go get a third opinion. I went to a doctor who specialized in uterine cancer. And all he could say is, and I quote, All I can do is take your uterus. That was what his answer to me. That was how he said it. I said, oh, let me get the hell up out of here. And I had my UFE.
Mm. Mm.
I'm sorry if I'm talking all over the place, but like
No.
there's an arc of trauma in my life that like I can connect to each point of where my uterus has thrown salt in my whole game.
Yeah,
It doesn't sound all over the place, though.
it doesn't. Especially to the two of us, because we've, not for as long as you, but have experienced very similar things. I think my question that I'm pondering is, how do you feel like your reproductive health has impacted your confidence in yourself as a woman?
We'll be back after a quick break.
Are you a Black woman in middle management looking to elevate your leadership skills in a safe space? Then listen up, because I have something special just for you. Join a coaching group of like-minded women focusing on emotional intelligence, management skills, and leading in white spaces. In our group coaching sessions, you'll gain leadership skills, tools, and strategies. Plus, you'll gain a powerful network of sisters who understand your journey. No more leaning alone. Ready to take the next step? Visit www.iamkelly to learn more and join a cohort. Let's lead together.
Can I just first say before we go there?
Yeah.
When we first started talking about this episode,
Mm.
I was like, I don't even know if I need to be here because this isn't really for me. This is more of a conversation between Kelli and Chiyah. like not to say I don't want to be here, but like I never thought, like, I have compartmentalized my life so much that I didn't even connect myself to the story. So even at the beginning, y'all was talking, I was over here checking Slacks at work because I was like, oh, I'm gonna let them have a little conversation. And then Chiyah was talking, I was like, oh shit, this is my life too.
Kendra, I want to cry every time you speak. It's a lot.
I'm just telling the truth. I was completely ready. When I saw that this was on the calendar, I was like, okay, oh, this is what we talking about. Oh, okay, yeah, this will be mostly Chiyah and Kelli anyway, so I could chill. I could, you know what I mean? And I could, pop in when I can. This ain't really about me. What the hell?
Do you think it's because you were so young when you first started having reproductive health challenges?
I think, yes. I think it's so, but in my mind, it's like we're talking about wanting to have children.
Mm-hmm.
Which I haven't said that I haven't had that issue. Like, especially when I found out I might not be able to.
Right.
So it became a thing for me, but like over the course of but now it's like I'm on the other side of it, but it was very different. Like Kelli's been married for a long time, and Dr. Chiyah has been like, this is a present moment thing for her. So for me, it's like, okay, you had a blip but I didn't even think about like, oh wait, I've had a period since I was 10 or 11 years old. This has been going on for 40 years almost, Sorry.
No.
I know that's weird.
No, it's not, because
honestly,
similarly, like this has been going on for almost 20 years for me. And so I have there's been this gradual reconciling that I may not have children. I have had to be angry at Kaiser's approach, more than one physician being like, oh, we'll just wait till you meet the one before we do anything about it. And then finally going to a different location, like, oh, we don't know why they let you go this far and why they let you be on birth control this long. We're going to take it, and I have a scar up to my belly button. But it's never, to answer the question, no, for me, it hasn't affected my confidence as a woman, in the sense that I don't believe you have to be a woman, you must bear children.
Mm-hmm.
But then I don't really know on the other hand, because I've just been dealing, and it's that compartmentalizing and surviving and just keeping it pushing. Like in the first chapter, well, I was in graduate school. I can't have a baby now anyway, because I have to get out of graduate school. And then I didn't have a job. And then my mother was ill. And then, and the one has not appeared. So I don't know. It's been like I haven't had space to do anything other than deal with it, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And to answer your question, it still does. Impact my, like, in general, I'm a relatively confident person. I know who I am. I'm clear on my why, so I move through the world like that. So people assume that I'm like super overconfident about everything. but like my body has betrays me on the regular. So if I disembody and think about myself as like the brain, the talker, oh, I'm good. Like, yeah, like you can battle this. But when you're talking about the woman, and I see it impact women much older than me, like it's a whole different thing. It's not just the aesthetic of how we look, it's of how we feel.
Yeah.
I was convinced this is crazy we're having this conversation because all of a sudden I was having lower back and abdominal pain. And I was like, I don't think it's a uterine or infection. I don't think it's anything like that because like I'm not having any other like pain or any other symptoms. I said, but this kind of feels like what it feels like when you have fibroids. I hope the hell this ain't coming back. And then I started getting paranoid. I was like, man, I thought I was done with all this. Like I'm about to head towards menopause. I'm trying to be done. Like I don't even want to know you even exist. I don't want you to go. I don't want a hysterectomy, but I just want you to just be there
and be quiet.
Shut up, sit down somewhere, read a book, and don't say nothing
at all. Don't even blink.
Don't blink.
Don't blink.
Just chill.
Yes.
So like this was just happening the other day, and then I told Greg, I said, yeah, something's going on with my lower abdomen. He's like, you think you have an infection? He's like, you think you have to just go to the bathroom? Like if I had to take a dump.
Let me tell you something. I'm trying not to bash on the men today, but they couldn't take it. Ain't no way.
No.
They never survive. Never.
I have the opposite experience Kendra experienced in that after both surgeries, they've come back mightily. And this time it's just kind of like, well, just chill out.
Mm-hmm.
For however long, please, because I'm not doing it again, and I don't want a hysterectomy.
Well, my neurotic, the lady that I had to leave who told me that now that I'm bigger, that's what's so. Her answer to like trying to act like she cared about me was kept getting me tested for okay. She's like, African American women are at high risk for uterine cancer, so she kept making me get those things where they clip a little bit of your cervix.
I'm about to have one of those.
I've had one already, and she tried to send me for another one a year later. I said, for what? Nothing has changed. And she's like, well, y'all are at high risk. And I'm like, are you sadistic? I'm sorry, Kelly. Go ahead.
No. Listen, I've talked to like 5 Black women today, and I requested medication. I was like, stop. I'm not taking Advil. You're going to give me something strong, because the way Black women have described this procedure, ain't no way.
It's painful. But the only thing that got me through, shout out, I always stand by this. If you really want to get through a procedure in the office, and as long as it's not like in a surgery, but if it's in the office, request a nurse practitioner. Those ladies are just different. They built different. Because the nurse practitioner that did mine, I felt so like even though she was doing the most painful thing I'd ever experienced beside that saline infused ultrasound, the way her approach to me, the way she was caring for me, I got through it. And so, and I screamed. I was like screaming, and she was like, go ahead and scream. Like do what you got to do. I was like, ah! But like by the time you're done screaming, it's over.
Yeah.
Speaking of though pain management, this is my gynecologist friend told me this for IUD. I don't know if it applies to other procedures, but
you talking about your twin?
Worth the ask. But she told me to ask for a paracervical block and lidocaine jelly. I imagine it could be helpful in any in-office
procedure. You need to put that
painful
in the group chat, because I will copy and paste that into my chart tonight.
And we're gonna put that in the show notes.
We will, absolutely.
Sorry, Kelly. Go ahead. Talk to us about your confidence in your body.
Oh, I was just thinking. Me and Jack is my husband. To the audience, we're actually talking about this. I was much more confident in my sexuality as a single 20 person than as a married person who realized that my reproductive organs did not work, and then just feeling just disgusting anytime I had my period. Right? It was the pain. It was the clots. It was just uncomfortable. Like it just felt like, if it wasn't the gushing feeling, it was the pressure in my abdomen. Like it was just, don't look at me, right? Like just don't look at me. And so I do think that it can absolutely affect your confidence. I know plenty of women who like to have sex during their period. I cannot be that person, because my uterus hurts on a good day, right? And so the idea that I want to feel sexy during my cycle, it was just not my reality. And, thankfully I can talk about these things when I feel like I have the words to talk about them with my husband, but it still has definitely affected how I move as a woman for sure. And then with the children thing, right? Like I was very clear, like I didn't want to spend the price of a house or add to student loan debt to start a family again because we already had kids. But if price hadn't been an issue, I might have made a different decision. But it is so very expensive. And so when I started thinking about how invasive it was and the cost and the stress, when you hear other folks who've gone through different fertility treatments, I was like, you know what? We almost out of the teen years. I think I'm good. And so I don't know that I came to my own decision from an empowered place, right? I think I came to my decision, kind of as from a practical, resigned to the situation place. And I think a lot of folks are in that now, right? I know plenty of people who want to try IVF or try what is it, the IU, whatever the other one is, but their insurance doesn't pay for it. I have colleagues who want to get pregnant, but they can't find Black sperm donors. So it's like you have this time pressure, you have a financial pressure, and then you have on top of that, it's not a lot of Black healthy donors in the donor bank. And so it's just like compounding everything. And so I just hold so much. I think empathy for myself was what I'm learning, how to be empathetic to me and how I've had to weather all these different challenges and still be situated in my womanhood, and that my womanhood is not defined by my reproductive organs, even though it has really shaped it in a lot of different ways.
I'm listening to y'all and I realize I've separated those parts of my womanhood in part because I've been single most of my adult life. But also, one way being a late bloomer helped me is that I was already experiencing these things before I became who I was sexually and began to appreciate my body. And then I wasn't, there's not always someone here. And so I'm in control of when I share myself. And so it's not during the difficult times, but it's very separate from the fertility, motherhood or not piece of it all. Because when I think about when I finally tried to explore, well, what is my fertility and what are my options? Well, that stopped because they were like, ooh, can't see your ovaries because of your fibroids. But, maybe you can get an MRI to your point about invasive. Like if I need an MRI just to start after I had done the blood test, that was not promising. So if I need an MRI just to see about stuff I can't afford, what are we going to do here? But that's very different from me and my sexuality, which thankfully, I've managed. I've had one embarrassing moment, but it was a little bit after surgery. It probably was too soon. So that was the thing.
No judgment.
This is turning into a different show.
No, but seriously, it's two different parts of my
identity,
my life, my mind, my emotions.
Do you think it's we compartmentalize? Well, I guess I'm answering my own question. We compartmentalize because having it all together would just be too much.
Probably.
I mean, that's usually why people compartmentalize, right?
Yeah.
I think about it in terms of people who are diehard one issue voters about they're like, I don't care what else this fool's doing, but they said that they against abortions. I'm a rock with that. And that's going to keep me, even though it's completely insane, that's going to keep me sane enough to keep going every day. Because if I really think about all this other stuff, I have to rethink who I am. and who I am in the world, and it's too much to bear. So I'd rather just go like this. Nope. I don't, all that other stuff, I'm gonna explain it away, I'm gonna joke it away, but I'm gonna stick with this because this aligns with who I thought I was and with what I thought the world was supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we can do that to with ourselves, with our reproductive health.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
can I go ahead? No, finish what you're gonna say.
no, those words. This aligns with who I thought I was and what I thought it was supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
Reproductive health issues turns all of that on its head, and so of course we can't take it all together when you put it in perspective like that, and put it into that perspective, I should say.
Can I offer like what would be considered probably a few years ago the hottest of takes?
Mm-hmm. Please.
Regardless of like reproductive issues and how that impacts our interfaces or intersects with our sexuality and like our womanhood, I think the more I've grown comfortable and in support of being an ally to trans women,
Mm-hmm.
the more I have felt empowered in my own womanhood, divorced from what my body does or does not do. And I think a lot of folks have gone the opposite way and are like, you know, I've seen like people put transphobic stuff. Well, you can't even have babies. Well, some of us that was born like we can't either. You don't have this. Well, some of us, don't have it. Like so. Why not think that their body might have betrayed them from the door jump, like my body betrayed me from the jump? Like, I mean, I don't mean to be reductive, but like thinking through what it must be like to be a trans woman, knowing that people literally want you dead, but yet you still live your true authentic self and still being so empowered in your womanhood makes me think like, Kendra, you're a woman and you fight. And it gives me a different sense of empowerment. So I already know, I'm gonna let y'all know now, I'm not the one nor the two. So if you have something to say, keep it cute.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I appreciate that. So I guess my follow-up to that is the church saying God don't make no mistakes a myth?
You trying to start some shit?
No, I'm speaking from my experience, right? Like, if this is the body that I have, and I've had a lot of health issues, right? So we haven't talked about a lot of this on the pod, but like from a child, I've had countless surgeries, right? My body has never worked the way a body is supposed to work. And so it feels like a mistake. It feels like surely this could not have been your plan. Cause what's the what's the sermon here? I don't get it. Cause it feels like torture. So I'm curious. Do you think how your body is a mistake? Do you feel like it is divine sovereign will? Is it, what was it, Kai? Providential? What did Bishop Omer used
Providence.
to say? Is it providence? Like, what is it?
I mean, this is part of what the deconstruction process is about, right? Is to say some people just completely wholly reject things after they go through the struggle of like, what does this mean? Everything I've been told was a lie. But the deconstruction framework says, okay, wait a minute, I have actually lived now, and some of this stuff ain't what like I am in tuned enough with the world in my body to know that some of this ain't what it this ain't it. And so the more I'm able to say, what is actually God telling me through this thing versus what I was instructed from a sermon or Bible school or Sunday school. I've learned wonderful things in all those places. Don't get me wrong. I mean, part of the reason why I'm in Pittsburgh is because of a sermon that convicted me to be here. But as sooner I can deconstruct some of that stuff, I'm like, okay, my certain things that my body is doing are meant to tell me a story, are meant to give, to be a compass for my journey. And can't just be what I've been told about it myself. And so, yeah, I do think that thing that God don't make no mistakes can be looked at two ways. You can say that, like, I feel broken, but, like, is it a mistake or is it meant to teach me something about, like, what perfection is, what womanhood is, what's it means to be, like, maybe some of what we've been told is just man-made lies and people using God's name in vain. I don't know. I don't know the answer. This is just me thinking out loud.
Yeah.
Lord knows I don't have the answers.
My gut response was, well, how do we define mistake? So
yes. You said in 2 seconds what I just said in 45.
Well, yeah, because
Yeah.
then if we change how we think about this brokenness, then it's not a mistake. No, God doesn't make mistakes. But then the rest of me, from 2016 to 2019, journeying with my mother, all those platitudes, if that's the right way to use that word, just stopped doing it for me. God doesn't make mistakes. God's going to heal. And okay, well, so I just think it is, like Kendra, you said, he doesn't make mistakes. Maybe this brokenness is supposed to teach me something, or it's supposed to tell me something about my journey. And I am a little farther toward the,
No,
like, it just is.
That's not what I meant.
Okay.
But I just want to make sure that's clear, because the reason I don't mean to stop you, but because I feel like we hear a lot of that rhetoric from the church. I didn't mean like this brokenness is supposed to mean to tell me. I meant to tell me that, like, what I'm experiencing is meant me to teach me something, but it's not brokenness. That
I understood what you meant. I was just
okay. Yeah, I just don't want. I don't want the saints think that I'm out here telling people that they're supposed to be in pain and broken, because we hear enough of that shit already. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
It didn't feel like that at all. But I'm more even farther from that at the, like, it just is. And I don't know if that's comforting all the time.
Yeah.
But it keeps me from trying to figure it out, which maybe is not the best thing either. But it's where I land.
Yeah.
I appreciate that perspective. And I think maybe what I meant to say is that I think just like in our society that, like, white, male, heteronormative, Western is, like, considered the norm, and that what life has been for us in this world is a moving goalpost, is that, okay, in the case of being a woman, it's like fertile, but not too fertile, sexually appealing, but not too sexually appealing. There's always, like, this goalpost, and, like, maybe all this change is meant to tell us that, like, none of that shit makes sense, and that, like, what you are, and kind of the same thing as you. Who you are and what you are is what you're supposed to be. And, like, that goal of, like, having the perfect uterus is not a thing. And quite frankly, if we knew that earlier, we probably would have had less pain because we would have dealt with it differently. But part of our brain kept telling us that, like, oh no, it's not supposed to be like this. It's supposed to be like that. As opposed to saying, like, this shit ain't right. Fix it. Because we were trying to get back to normal, as opposed to being like, yeah, no, I'm in pain. I don't feel good. Fix it. Not like fix me. Fix it.
Because we shouldn't. Now, what I do believe to be true is we ought not be in pain all the time.
Right.
That's a whole
literal
word.
or figuratively.
Yeah.
Right. Fix the pain, not me. Like, it's not, we're not flawed. This is messed up. And a lot of it is the medical industry convincing us that, like, there's something wrong with us. You're not eating the right things. You're not doing the right. You weren't born in the right family. You didn't do the right thing early enough. There's always, like, this thing, instead of just saying, like, because I mean, if we were really wealthy people, I don't think it would have went down in the same way.
No.
Concierge medical service is different.
Interesting.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Kelli.
No.
I'm on a rant and a rave now. I went from I'm not part of this conversation to, like, bring it. Let's do this.
I'm looking at our producer's face, and I've been watching I've been watching your reactions, and I was curious what is percolating for you as you're hearing this conversation.
Several things. So I feel like I tend to bring in a queer perspective often on this show. And so this is something that has resonated with me And so I'm thinking through my own experiences as I'm listening to you all. And this is something that I've had to come to terms with in the past couple of years of as a queer woman, I've always had probably the most agency when it comes to deciding to become a mother or not, or deciding to parent or not. And I had an experience a couple of years ago, yeah, a couple of years ago at this point, where I had to come to terms with that potentially no longer being my choice. And it
Mm,
happened very quickly. Um, my entire life, I have never been sure if I've wanted to be a mother. That was not a thing that was very, that really drew me. I was not compelled. I was like, I need to live a little bit of life first. And so to have that so quickly potentially ripped away from me, I struggled mightily with that. And so, just hearing you all's experiences and what that's been like, it's sad, it's encouraging, I feel supported while, hearing situations that are very different from my own. But
mhm,
then there's also that common through line and that similarity. So I just appreciate that. There were a
mm,
couple of questions that I had written down that came to mind. One, what do you wish you had been prepared with when it comes to your reproductive health
hmm.
in terms of knowledge, whatever?
Yeah. I mean, as a person who went to Catholic school, I actually just wish I knew what all the body parts were before they weren't working. My grandbaby said something to me the other day, and I was like, "You mean vagina?" Because I realized so many Black folks don't even call a vagina a vagina. And I was like, I don't think I've ever met any white colleagues who didn't call it a vagina. So I say vagina all the time because I'm like, that's what it is. So I just think even having such a religious education and then a very religious family, we just didn't talk about how the body works and what the components of the body were, right? Like my mom was very clear. She wanted me to know what safe sex was, and she wanted my father to tell me what safe sex was. She didn't want to talk about it, but she made sure, like, somebody needed to make sure I knew what that was. But we didn't have a conversation about periods and cycles and reproduction and any of those things that would have been really helpful information that actually might have helped me understand when something was wrong before something was wrong, if that makes sense. So that feels really top of mind for me.
I think for me, it is one, just any of the conversations you could have with your mother who has been doing this for 30 years longer than you, right? But like, for instance, I believe my mother went through menopause early, but I have no confidence in that statement because I think that I heard her say that before, but we never really had a conversation about it. So just a conversation about uterus cysts and the things that could happen or what that was like for her, how she found out or what did she do.
Yeah.
And then just fibroids in general, but this goes back to the big question mark as to why Black women experience it the way that we do. My primary care doctor is a young Black woman. And one of my first times meeting with her, she was frustrated because there is no research, there's not a lot out there. And so I was older, like mid to late 20s, with the doctor telling me, but no, it's no big deal.
Mm,
Well, it's not a big deal then until it's a big deal. And now that it's a big deal, now what? And then what do I do? And how do I navigate this? I think years ago at this point, I told you all, like, I just wish I knew what my options were before I needed an MRI to find out about my fertility, like, well, freezing my eggs, whether I could have afforded it or not. Just like, how do I navigate this now, quote, abnormal situation that I'm in? It's not going to be easy for me and it's not going to be timely. So what can I do?
mm-hmm.
Like what are my options? I wish I would have known what some
Yeah.
of my options were before now.
Hmm.
I would I would say ditto to a lot of what y'all said, especially about like our moms talking about things earlier, but I honestly don't know that they knew stuff
Mhm.
because if I'm damn near 50 still figuring stuff out, and my mom was 22 when she had me, by the time she was my age, I was like good and grown and had been out of college for years and all that kind of stuff. So that, but also I wish I would have known how little the medical field really knows about women's bodies, let alone my Black woman body, right? Remember what we used to hear like stuff like they would say, well, Black people are just big boned. And people were like, well, ain't no truth to that. I'm like, but it gotta be because but I was like, it makes sense though, because like I feel like we just way more because we be looking good, but our we be more weight than our white counterparts. Like something's different. Like what's going on? And I remember asking those kinds of questions, but being dismissed. And I just think that that's just what it has been like for women's bodies and it's still like the fact that like years later they don't know enough.
Mhm.
If we would have been able at the young age to say, listen, y'all don't know what y'all doing.
Mhm.
Like, who does? And being able to have the foresight to say, like, well, let's find the doctor that knows a little bit more about our bodies, opposed to like, who takes our insurance?
Mhm.
Because that's basically what our lives have been:
Yeah.
is who takes our insurance, not who knows who can help us get us the best information we have. It's just now where I'm like older, have a great job, have great insurance in the past how many years when I've been able to make choices about doctors. But before, it was like, who can we either afford to go to or who takes my insurance? And we've been done a disservice because of that, I believe.
And we're women, right? Because the more I hear about men's health and the advances that have been made with men's health compared to women's health, it just makes me want to fight like every single time. Right? I remember talking to my doctor and be like, yeah, I feel like my libido's low. Like, you got something for that? And she was like, yeah, just go to the store and, when you get to the vitamin section and you see the things that are pink, you could probably find something there. Now, let a man go in the doctor's office and say, yeah, my erections haven't been lasting that long. They're going to give them the blue pill so fast. Right?
Oh, at the VA, they give them joints out like Tic Tacs.
Yeah. And I'm just thinking to myself, why? Because a man's manhood and his pleasure is always going to be centered, right? So when we think about the impact of girls not being confident in science, girls not being supported to be in higher math and science classes, that has real implications for why so many Black women are dying of breast cancer because they get treatment later and the experience they have with treatment, or why so many of us don't get the proper response when we talk about the pain that we're in, or why so many of us have gone years and years and years with fibroids and never had a medical intervention to be able to support us other than putting us on a pill that's actually making it worse, right? So I just really hope that when we think about the future, why it's so important for women to be in positions of power so that we can begin to change the ways that research is done, the way that we talk about these things, and the access that folks have. So I do believe the future is in our hands, ladies.
Real talk. And the crazy part about all the things you just said from the beginning is men got all them advancements that don't even want to go to the damn doctor.
Ooh, say that again.
And then you also just like, man, that's a whole pod right there of how many of us have died or been near death, or how much extra pain in the world has been because women have been held back from math and science. So I work at a company where our chief engineering officer is a woman. She has a long post, but the gist of her post is basically that like she loved math as being a girl. And she took an IQ test and a math assessment in 5th grade. And they told her that she wasn't ready for math. But then in the 7th grade, she took an SAT and she found out she was identified as having exceptional mathematical ability. And that like people were dissuading her from math, and like now, like no shade, this lady is a genius. And she thinks actually mathematically.
Right.
Her brain works at math. And that like if she had not had that opportunity to take the SAT at 12, there would have been an issue. But she also talked about how what happened to her in 5th grade impacted her confidence when she took the test in 7th grade. So even though she did it great, it probably been even better if they hadn't told her that she wasn't good.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the chief engineering officer of one of the most successful tech companies in the world, who, by the way, is a white woman who lived part of her life in France, part of the United States. Like, this is we talking about. So what you just said, like, we should really think about, like, addressing that. Like, when people talk about girls and women in STEM, that there are actual literal life or death implications to us not being in those spaces.
Absolutely.
As we wrap up, our producer offered us another question, and I think maybe we can answer this question before we do takeaways.
Yeah.
I like this question. Who taught you, or how did you learn to advocate for yourself medically?
For me, it was my mom. Because I was sick as a child, my mom had to learn really early how to advocate for my needs. And I remember her not liking one of my first surgeons, or my second surgeon. She didn't like him at all. And she just didn't get a good feeling about him. So she asked for a second opinion. She would also go to Kaiser, had a library back then, and she would go downstairs to the library to research scoliosis because she didn't know anything about it. And she was just, it was such a big decision to make for me to have such major surgery at 13. And she just wanted to make the right decision. And so fast forward, I had the surgery. It wasn't a great result. And my mom then started researching physicians who could do my surgery again. And so my mom ended up finding out that one of the top scoliosis spinal fusion orthopedic surgeons who does spinal fusions at the time was at UC San Francisco. And she switched her health insurance to get on the plan that this doctor would take so that I could have a surgery a month before I was going to age out of her health insurance. Right. So when I have to advocate for my daughter who has chronic illness, I know how to do that. And I know how to advocate for myself because of how my mother advocated for me. So thank you, Mommy.
That's so bomb.
Mm-hmm.
I think I take for granted that I do advocate for myself medically when necessary, because I do. But I know how I respond when I hear stories of people not being able to or not knowing how. And I'm just like, what do you mean? And I'm my mother's child. Like, it feels like osmosis, like I am who she was. So yeah, that's how I learned. I can't say any more now. Yeah. Got a little choked up.
We love you, Miss Joycey.
I didn't know you, Miss Joycey, but I still love you. I see you every time I look at Chiyah anyway.
Amen.
Okay, guys.
I've been choked up all day too, so I'm don't feel bad if you need to cry. Come on, if you're
now
out there
you're gonna
listening,
make me cry.
If you're out there listening in podcast land and you need to cry, here's a big old virtual hug.
Miss Joycey, I know you're looking down at your baby and you're smiling.
I mean, well, that was the gist of it, though. I just think, like, I learned from her, like, she was the reason why we were always insured, and if there was a problem, we were going to go to the doctor. The man that I feel like I'm raising now is the opposite.
Not the man. But don't do my friend like that.
We love you, Baba Lawrence.
But yeah, she just was really determined to take care of herself and take care of me, and I try my best when I need to, at least, because of my mommy.
Yay for mommies.
Yep.
Now I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm quick to go off on somebody in most spaces, but in the medical space, I am still just learning and growing in my self advocacy. If I don't feel honored by a space, I have just been in the space where I'm like, I just leave. I've gotten better in recent years because I've had to in order to like be okay. But like it is still a struggle for me, like even with this whole like last trauma that I had with the gynecologist who turned out to be, that lady is yeah, I'm gonna leave it at that. It took me a minute to even realize I had been traumatized by her. It took me like, oh wait a minute, did she really say that to me? like months, to the point where I even convinced myself she was a good doctor. So I'm still figuring that out. So I tend to, my advocacy for myself is tend to be like, okay, let me go somewhere else. But I've been trying to take a both and approach and be like, but also let you know. When her nurse called me and yelled at me because I had an appointment the next day, and she looked at my record and realized I saw another gynecologist in between our last appointment, and they tried to go off.
I remember that, and I remember being very angry
That's
when you told me.
Let me tell you
so
something.
unethical, unprofessional, and kiss my ass out of pocket.
Like when you see people like in spaces like flipping tables, like I wanted to go in there and flip her little the little silver tray with the little medical pieces and things so bad. I wanted to vandal.
And I would have applauded you.
And I went to the appointment just so I could look her in her face. I was like, listen, if it's an issue, I won't come. And the lady was like, oh. So I came and I was like, and that's the last time I saw that lady. Anyway, yeah, I'm still working on it. So with that, takeaways. Any takeaways, including you, Dr. Tate, any takeaways that you'd like to share with us?
My takeaway is fix the pain, not me. I think that's something I wrote down, but that's something that I think applies in so many ways to our personhood. It's not just related to our reproductive health. It's not related to our physical health. It's our mental health, right? It's our spiritual well-being. It's all of these elements. Or we are encouraged to pathologize where it's actually community factors and community practices that should change and be adapted to better support us in our unique and individual needs. And yet we are made to believe that it's, within our control. And sometimes it's not. Oftentimes it's not.
I think my takeaway is around the theme of it is, this is just what it is. Yeah, that my journey is what it is.
And mine is, I think that we should keep talking about it. We didn't get to talk about it as much as I didn't have someone to talk to me about it as much as I would have needed. And so for those in my life or in my orbit or that I come in contact with that I can talk about these things with, that I should.
Yeah.
My takeaway is that I too have trauma and I be forgetting. Until I hear somebody else talk, like, oh yeah, I have that too. And so, not to say I want to re-traumatize myself, but I need to, like, I've had other friends tell me before, Kendra, you're always like lessening like your struggles and like talking about everybody else's. And like, that's like a trend with me. So this just reminded me of that. I wish we were allowed to play music. Because I want to hear, he'll take the pain away. I know he'll take the pain away. Dang. One day we're going to be rich enough to get licenses and things.
If we call ourselves a church, we can get one of them.
We're not doing that.
Anybody can be a church nowadays. Shoot.
Child. We could be a virtual community.
Yes, we can.
I mean, we are a church. We are the church.
We are the church. Let me go fill out that little form that we use at my church to get our music.
I too am the church.
And at this church, we talk about the uterus. I too am the church.
But let's make it in rainbow colors just to make everybody mad.
Yes, Lord. Yes, Lord. Yes, Lord.